You're walking in the woods. There's no one around and your phone is dead. Out of the corner of your eye, you spot him.
Hello there, my name is Graham and today we're going to be pulling apart the time-fractured scenario, The Code. It is one of the new offerings found in the rebooted Mansions of Madness, Volume 1, published by Chaosium and written by Christopher Lackey and Lynn Hardy. Set in the classic 1920s, The Code revolves around the story of a scientist, Dr. Kennedy Conley, as he creates a time machine suit. However, his new partner and butler are not what they seem, and soon, paranoid and fearful of his suit being stolen, Conley writes to a friend with a code that is required to make the suit work. Not long after, invites are sent out to all his colleagues, proclaiming a breakthrough of the age, and all should come to witness its first public performance. What is really going on is Dr. Conley's new partner, a seductress that goes by Elizabeth Rowland, and her partner in crime, David Rowland, disguised as her brother, murder and rob Dr. Conley of his new invention. Dr. Conley's motives are hand-waved a little bit here, as we were meant to expect that he would be willing to do these experiments with two people within the house he does not trust, instead of moving it to the university or somewhere else more secure. It's a little fanciful for sure, but to quote him, it will be fine. Only it won't be fine, and he's now dead. With no way to use the device, as they have no code, the two thieves are left empty-handed and have sent out invitations to lure back whoever Dr. Conley has sent the codes to, and so an elaborate game of cat and mouse begins. Honestly, the setup is fantastic and it promises a lot, giving the keeper a huge scope to play exciting NPCs, themselves are acting and pretending to be other people. These two criminals, for example, have 3 names each, so be sure to get the story down and read the scenario at least a few times so you get the names right in your head, or you run the risk of accidentally saying the wrong name at the wrong time and cluing in your players, even if it is on a meta level, that something is amiss too early. I genuinely love the concepts in this scenario, and there's a lot going for it. It lends itself to a great session, but some of the execution could have been a little bit more exciting and the reveals a little bit more alluring. But the scenario does do an excellent job in utilising its unique aspect of time anomalies to tell the story in a dynamic way. But sometimes it feels like they don't push it hard enough, and it leaves it looking like a little bit of a gimmick in places. But we'll get onto that as we break down the scenario. This scenario has an asymmetrical start, as one player will be offered the actual letter sent by Conley for safekeeping, and the others will just get mere invitations to see the spectacle of the operation of the time suit. This will clue one of the players in straight away that something is afoot with the Doctor and his inventions, and how they handle that clue will cause plans to be set in motion should they reveal it ham-fistedly, because the two criminals will make their move straight away. It adds a nice dynamic to the introduction, but the hook also requires everyone to know Dr. Conley, and herein lies one of the problems. The buy-in to know Conley feels a little shoehorned into the PC's backstory. I would highly recommend to run this as part of an ongoing sequence of one-shots with the same PCs, setting Dr. Conley up as someone they know and would talk to on occasion, offering advice and help from the Miskatonic University well before you run this scenario. This will give more investment into the story, and I know many people might not be able to do this sort of setup, but it's unfortunately the very best way to actually get the players to connect with Conley and be more involved or bought into finding what happened to him, and to buy into why they would be here in the first place as well. The scenario does offer the idea of flashbacks to fill in that relationship for players who are coming in cold, and these are slice of life sort of scenes that you could try and come up with yourself. However, they may feel a little bit dull or lackluster unless your players and you are heavily invested RPing in your games, since they will offer nothing to the plot to move forward and are merely here just to justify their involvement, and it's a little bit of a band-aid. Another idea you may wish to expand on the scenario somewhat and add some of these things into the time anomalies. It kind of gives you license to play with these scenes a little bit with Conley and expand on some of that knowledge and really fill them in, and weaving an out of sync plot akin to the Reservoir Dogs as they discover more about his past and build in their connection that way. But it is entirely up to you. I do feel that this scenario is for more experienced keepers, as there's lots of options available to you and lots of avenues for you to explore and expand on and really flex your creativity. Newer keepers who are used to being more handheld and railroaded we might feel a little bit lost with all of these options available to them. The opening offers 2 NPCs as well, that the players could utilise as pre-gens, as they already have a buy-in to Dr. Conley and should know him. However, these are really here as patsies presented at the start. They are basically window dressing, so Pierce and Davis aren't too obvious as the villains of the scenario. And you should even play them a little bit off-kilter and not so friendly or not so likeable, so the players will feel that they are indeed somewhat suspect. If you play them too nice and too friendly, then Pierce and Davis are again a little bit more obvious in what they are. I feel it is better to move the PCs, however, to the library before announcing that Conley is missing and having them waiting there and keep waiting as the butler becomes more and more flustered that he cannot find Conley and he is nowhere to be seen. This feels more natural when he makes the announcement and he can actually ask the guest to help look because the house is so big, rather than him saying he has looked and cannot find him. It also leaves the PCs in the library along with plenty of stuff to snoop and look at straight away as the butler looks around and tries to find him. Of course, this is a lie, and Conley is already buried in the garden, and it is mainly to split up the party that they wish them to look or help search for Conley, so they can basically target who they need to and get them alone. The pair are looking for someone that can get the machine working again, or the person that has the code, and have removed the device that the code needs to be punched into, and have hidden it in the attic, along with summoning an entity to protect it. Because of course, Elizabeth is into the occult and used rituals from Yog-Sothoth as a muse for Conley to make the bloody thing in the first place. If the player got the codes, blunders and outright tells them about it, then Pearson Davis, the butler, will start killing off those that are not useful to them, moving on to their next stage of their plan to take the code and to steal away the suit. From here the game really begins, and there are several things that the keeper will have to juggle and keep in mind. The house has general descriptions and clues that are fairly mundane within them, and there is events that can be used where and when the keeper would like to keep the plot going and the suspense high, building the uncanny and weird. I will say that the horror is quite light in this scenario, but it does have a nice thriller vibe to it, and it's easy to invoke a Stephen King Shining feel to it if you nail down that atmosphere and really start to grow the darkness in your descriptions as they explore this strange old house. The mundane finds in the house serve their purpose, but I feel they could be a little more interesting, and there is a lengthy diary handout that can be found, well, 3 of them to be exact, where they do an alternative narrative within their pages, showing the duality of time and showing the differences between 2 sets of realities. It is not fun to hand over 10 pages of reading to do within a game. This is telling, not showing, but does act as a bit of a backup if required. I would suggest being selective of what pages you hand out in-game unless you're really struggling to get the players to join the dots, but they should be able to find the plot elsewhere. I feel these excessive journal handouts are becoming commonplace, and they need to be given advice that they should be used perhaps after the scenario to fill in the plot details if the players want to find out more. It happens in Mr. Corbett as well and a few others. Journal entries of in excess of 10 pages is a novella, and some of Lovecraft's own stories are shorter than these damn things, so I would use these sparingly as possible. In a small blessing, at least these 10 pages are split up into 3 finds and offer clues to who Lizzie is and the butler are. The player should pay close attention to the physicality that's mentioned of the butler and Lizzie's attitude and how she reacts within them to juxtapose against what they are in reality, and they should clue them in to who these people really are. And this is really the crux of the investigation, the dawning realization of who these fraudsters are before they find whomever has the code and acquire it. And that is reinforced in the mundane clues about Pierce and Davis throughout. This is somewhat keeper dependent, however, as their presentation has to be on point, and it is on the keeper's shoulders to give enough away without making it too obvious of their true nature. The dreaded psychology role here is your enemy, and some players feel that it is a truth detector button. It is not. The scenario does provide excellent advice and goes over how to make these professional liars harder to catch in their lie. This may sour some players as they feel they should be rewarded for each and every success, and this may come as a surprise should you, as a GM, allow blatant truth-telling with this skill. Be careful with it. On top of the mundane clues, there are also time-altering anomalies as a second layer of investigation, and it is here this scenario really comes into its own. With Dr. Conley's experiments with the suit, pockets of time have altered the house, and now small events from eons in the future and far into the past are mingled with those that offer revelations of more recent events within the manor. Some of these events are subtle interactions, with players even being offered conversations with themselves, setting the stage for the bizarre adventure and instilling a sense of unease and distrust of their own senses. Other anomalies find the players being confronted by visitors from the far off future and being stalked through the winter by wolves in the far past. These ones are a little bit of fun and should clue the players in that time here is wrong. These encounters can leave the players a little confused. Some players will love that, others looking for more plot and revelations might be left in the cold and feeling frustrated as you add these random events into the actual scenario, unless you choose to actually tie them in more fully with the plot. Use what you think your group will interact with best and make your decisions in the planning stage of how you wish to resolve most of this scenario, and stick with your decision unless the player's agencies alter it beyond use. This is a very keeper dependent scenario, I cannot stress that more. Other than these, there is only one scene with Conley that is actually useful at giving clues to what happened here, and this is almost criminal. I adore this scene, and I think it is one of the best within the scenario itself, and I think it was a missed opportunity not to do this more with different scenes. Instead of using the journal to tell, you can literally show them events within the house within recent weeks. Have the events show cowled people at a ritual with a hint of familiar voices, Pierce and Conley. Show hushed conversations where players can only catch a few words of Davis being called David instead. The possibilities here are endless to clue in the players in very clever ways, and it makes the diary almost obsolete, which is almost bewildering to me. Pull them into the plot, allow them to play out these past scenes, and do not have 10 minutes of silent reading instead. This is not a library, it is an interactive RPG. The scenario offers a great storytelling tool with these time bubbles. Abuse it. An experienced GM will have a lot of fun. However, a newer GM will probably stick to the script, and it might feel a little bit more random. The finale of the scenario is a little open-ended and hinges on the discovery of Davis and Pierce, which is a little out of the blue sometimes, and can cut the scenario short and keep the discovery in the dark. The confrontation with the two con artists will come down to them and their pet entity, with Lizzie having a few spells to keep her alive should it come down to a gunfight. I feel this is a fine ending to the scenario, but it is the default one and it feels a little bit mundane to what is a crazy scenario. There is a glut of other solutions on offer here to this odd duck, and I feel that some of these would be far more satisfying, and ultimately it is up to you as a keeper to decide. I love this as a keeper as you can tailor it to the tone and tastes of your group, offering everything from the aliens from the future taking the time suit as it's causing too much disruptions, or more temporal anomalies from the past and sucking them into a time lost and forgotten. You could even take them on fresh adventures, trapping them out of reality into somewhere like the Dreamlands or even into the past. Or you could start your Gaslight campaign this way. Some may feel it's a little unfinished, some may feel it's a little bland, but in the right hands with the right players, this is a gem that will shine very brightly. Where the scenario touches on time travel, it doesn't really give you much advice on it and basically gives you a massive shoulder shrug in 600 words, which will tell you that it's pretty hard to pull off and you're on your own here. And that is pretty much all you can do, is wing it. But take your time, plot out a few contingent ideas, and make sure you have players that would make the most of these crazy situations. With my game, 2 of my players ended up with the time suit, and forced a hobo called Ginger with the offering of a ham sandwich to test it. He stole the time suit instead after a successful test run, and is now robbing banks and creating mischief for himself on his own little adventures. No doubt he will turn up some other day in another scenario somewhere in the future. And with that, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again some other time.
His head topples to the floor, expressionless. You fall to your knees and catch your breath. You're finally safe.